Before my life, I was a part of the oceans and sky.
Welcome back to Sheep Farm and the latest in the Meet the Flockers episodes. In this series we take a deep dive into the backgrounds of high-profile individuals, businesses, NGOs and historical events that have shaped our lives. We'll investigate whether what we've been told can be trusted, although I think we already know, or that the big events were what we've been led to believe they were. In this episode, we take a deep dive investigation into Tony B. Lyer, ex-Prime Minister and a man guilty of mass murder and genocide of around 1 million human beings, including Afghans, Iraqis, as well as British and other coalition troops and auxiliary workers. This man has blood on his hands, no doubt. And he is a proven liar and actor who went to the right schools and, as always, seems to have the right bloodlines as well. Apart from the current corrupt lying idiot Bobo, there have been 2 Prime Ministers during our lifetime, and I'm 51 now, who have left a lasting impression on society and have been at the seat of supposed power, even though they were themselves controlled, for the destruction of lives on a mass scale. Margaret Thatcher and Tony B. Lyer. These 2, more than any others in the past 50 years, have left an indelible stain on humanity. And I'm not letting all the others off, they were just as corrupt and controlled. Blair, in my opinion, is, from a global perspective, the worst of the 2. He was another moulded and shaped for the time in the late 90s into the new millennium. Like this tool in power now, he was a control puppet, pretending to play the guitar and trying hard to be trendy by inviting pop stars into number 10. But he too is a pathological liar, proven without a shadow of doubt. But it was the carefully managed choreographed stage show of New Labour and B. Lyer's personal PR machine that kept the tight lid on the scandals that eventually came out. This man is a disgusting individual. The evidence is clear. His time in power was the catalyst to what's happening now. And why is this clown being wheeled out once again? To represent this nonsense that's currently going on. As always, we will only use mainstream information sources that's already in the public domain. We've all seen bits of this evidence here and there over the years, but it's when we see the evidence all together that the puzzle starts to make sense. So sit back and enjoy Sheep Farm 18, Tony B. Lyer. Just who are these flockers?
Tony Blair, Labour's man, addressing an audience of 23 last night.
The image of the Labour Party's got to be an image that's more dynamic, more modern, more suited to the 1980s. I don't actually think it's a matter of right and left as people make it out. What I do think is that it's a matter of style. Luck played a part in that because there was a field of very well-known people who all went in for it. And I think because it was one of the last seats in the country to select, and it was created out of the boundary changes, so everyone was piling into Sedgefield to get the nomination. And I think in a way what they decided at the end of the day was, you know, to hell with all these big names. I mean, you know, right, this young lad, put him in, and that was... So there was a bit of luck in it too.
Forget the past. No more bosses versus workers. We are on the same side, the same team, and Britain United will win. Ask me my 3 main priorities for government, and I tell you, education, education, and education.
When Tony Blair emerged from his North London home into the morning sunshine to head for the palace, he was almost swamped by well-wishers.
As I stand here before number 10 Downing Street, I know the huge responsibility that is upon me and the great trust that the British people have placed in me.
Prime Minister, can we please have your reaction to the news?
I feel like everyone else in this country today, utterly devastated. Our thoughts and prayers are with Princess Diana's family, in particular her two sons, the two boys. Our hearts go out to them. We are today a nation in Britain in a state of shock, in mourning, in grief that is so deeply painful for us. There have been the most terrible, shocking events taking place in the United States of America within the last hour or so. On Tuesday night, I gave the order for British forces to take part in military action in Iraq. Tonight, British servicemen and women are engaged from air, land and sea. Their mission? To remove Saddam Hussein from power and disarm Iraq of its weapons of mass destruction. For all of this, I express more sorrow, regret, and apology than you may ever know or can believe. Only two things I cannot say. It's claimed by some that by removing Saddam we caused the terrorism today in the Middle East and that it would have been better to have left him in power. I profoundly disagree.
All right, welcome to Sheep Farm 18 and Meet the Flockers series. Today we're going to talk about Tony B. Lyer and Tony B. Lyer's life before killing 1 million people on all sides. And I'm sorry we had to put you through that montage of videos of his early years and up to him being Prime Minister. But I think you needed to watch it just so you could freshen yourself up on what a cretin he is. B. Lyer makes my skin crawl, I know it makes Chris's skin crawl, and he's a creepy, lying flocker. We're not going to go into the time while he was Prime Minister, and we won't discuss 9/11, 7/7, Princess Diana's deaths, cash for honours, etc., etc. We may brush over these things in passing, but we feel these subjects have been spoken about quite a lot. And but this man, who should be standing for war crimes, has been dragged out of his box again and paraded on the TV as a reborn saviour of the human race for the current nonsense that's going on. Sadly, the masses are still falling for this total bollocks. Obviously, I don't include yourselves. There is no doubt that we are living in strange times where a small percentage of the global population can see reality and the rest just go along with the narrative that's laid out before them, leading them into the abyss. The truth of the matter is that we've been far too trusting, lulled into a false sense of security by governments who promise to look after us, but in the process of believing this nonsense, our heads have been turned and they're really killing us all off, making us ill and draining us of all our natural energies. The lies and false promises have allowed them to convince basically the whole planet to hand over their personal sovereignties for free. And in return, we get valueless material possessions. We've been asleep at the wheel. In fact, we've given the globalists the keys and they're driving for us. Poisoned by their toxic mass-produced food, we've become ill. So ill that we beg for their medicines that make us even sicker. And MK Ultra TV brainwashes us into believing the nonsense that unfolds in front of our eyes and ears. Industrial chemicals alter our genetics, hormones, as do frequency technologies. And when we wake up, if we wake up, to find we've been had, it's all too late. And if we're honest, we've all gone along with it at some point, whether through choice or not. Blair is a prime example of one of the puppets these elite entities use to gain access into our lives. He's a blatant liar like Johnson, he's a eugenicist like Johnson, and a sadist psychopath who just does not care about anything other than the plan. When I think of Blair, or when me and Chris think of Blair, we think of the million or so people he helped to kill on all sides of the Middle East crisis. But what is his upbringing? What were his school years? What about his bloodline? Is he a chosen one? In episode 1, we're going to investigate Beliar's early life. And episode 2 will probably be the leftovers from this first one, because it seems like we've got a lot of information here. So we'll go up to him being in number 10. And then there may be an episode 3 for the life after number 10. Beli Part 1 will build up the background understanding. And this is one jam-packed, as we say in Yorkshire, info-laden episode. With me tonight, as usual, is Chris, with his usual glass of red.
Mm-hmm.
What is it tonight?
Hello, Spookaruma. It's
Hello.
a most wanted Shiraz.
A Shiraz. You're on change tonight.
I just
Are
get
they on sale?
whatever my missus brings home, to be fair.
Right. I'm surprised you I'm surprised you pour it in a glass and you just don't have a straw in a bottle. People will have this wrong impression of you, won't they?
Well, I did
Oh,
mention
right,
that in the last one, yeah. I've got a small child and God knows how many jobs. So by the time we get to do this, it's quite late usually. It's actually the earliest we've ever done it, and it's 8:15.
Yeah. 8:15.
And by that time,
tonight
I'm
on a
crack a glass of red up now.
Yeah, on a Wednesday night, up in Yorkshire, it's Crackit Flags up here, and you're down south, and it's Crackit Flags down there, boiling. But we're going to go through that opening montage first, because there were quite a few films in there. I know you've just watched it again to freshen yourself up with it, but it showed, I think, like Boris, he's been tracked, nurtured, trained, monitored, and televised the Truman Show again, all the way through his fledgling career for the MK Ultra TV screens. Throughout all those videos, there is a lot of Duper's Delight I saw, like Johnson, Witty, Wancock, especially when he's announcing bad things, like death of Princess Diana and things like that.
Yeah, that looked like some bad acting as well, that did, I thought.
Yeah, it did look like bad acting. In the montage, he starts with an audience of just 23, and that's in 1983, making him look like he's worked his way up from nothing.
Well, first thing that sticks out to me there, Dom, is why they're videoing him if he's only got 23 people watching him? Why would any press have any interest in him?
Yeah, that's a good
point.
point.
Why would they have cameras there? Yeah, saying, look at this guy, he's only got 23 people following him. But it's like the Johnson one, they were building up the image, if you like. They've got it all to go back on and look at in the future when he gets to Iraq, can't they?
Yeah, look how tough he had it. He would in a church with 23 people there, and he was pushing his beliefs.
Yeah,
back then.
Reminds you of Greta Thunberg.
But I mean, listen to his voice. Does he sound like he comes from Glasgow or Durham? No. That plum gives it away. I mean, I know we haven't. Only nearest plum you've got is them grapes that's going down your throat. But the accent sounds to me like he's been to acting school, like it's trained. It's over the top, posh. Yeah, posh people or people with an accent like that don't talk like that.
No,
they don't make it sound like it's posh. It's just natural.
Even like Bobo,
it seems unnatural.
Where he does his old buffling buffoon. That looks like
that's an act. But he's a posh git. Is Bobo? Yeah. Blair isn't a posh git. You know,
he shouldn't be.
Yeah, or he shouldn't be. And in that second video, he says politics is all about style, and he couldn't make it as a pop star. So this is his stage, really, isn't it? If you think about it. He loves the audience, you know. He's got style and no substance, and I always thought that about him. Even back when he got voted in, it was all about the pizzazz.
Oh yeah, he was just an image. He was an image thing, wasn't it? New Labour.
Yeah, I mean, which is basically lying. So his line from the early days of getting voted in.
He's funny when you think all those comedians and celebrities who were all Labour, and then when he came in and actually did what he did, they all vanished. There was no one there to crib him, was there? He didn't get any flack for it, really.
No, none. It just reminds me of Obama when he got in, to be honest with you. Yeah. Same sort of principle.
He's going to be a glory boy no matter what he does, and that's it.
Yeah. And one of the interesting videos for me was that proves he was a chosen one, and he could see it in his eyes that he realised that didn't just happen by luck. He said he got when he got his first, I forget where it was now, where he made MP first, and the boundaries had just changed, so there was a new area that could be fought for by the parties. That's just at the same time.
That's the one where he's acting especially creepy, isn't it? Yeah. And he looks like he's had his eyebrows plucked as well.
Well, he's got his Gates jumper on with shirt hanging out at top.
And he looks really smarmy, like he knows something. He's been... It makes you wonder, was he a good actor and he was chosen for his actual acting talents?
Well, he did act at school,
Yeah.
and he's got his whole I say his whole family, his history is of actors. You know, his wife, her husband, her dad was an actor. We'll come into that anyway.
Yeah.
And one of the other videos when he became New Labour leader in 1994, making the party. If you think that at that particular point there were probably two looking parties, there were a left and a right. As soon as he became party leader, there were no choice anymore. It went like it is in America, where you think there's a choice because there's red and blue, but in reality there isn't.
Well, there was always Tories and Labour, but it was like they just became one entity, didn't they?
They did.
There's no difference in the politics at all.
No.
Except for really little tidbits that don't mean anything.
He was talking about the same shite they do now, wasn't he? Like education.
Bollocks,
three things.
Bollocks.
But he went to top private schools, boarding schools, and Oxford, and he's talking about education
and bridging
what
the
changed?
gap, bridging the gap between rich and poor.
Yeah. There is no boss, there is no worker. We're all one, and all this nonsense. But he went to Oxford, an elite school, and all the other schools. Again, we'll come into that. But how can he say this? What has changed, really, from 1997 or when he said that? What has changed since he were in power? Nothing.
Nothing. I think that's almost the beginning of where we are now, isn't it? That.
Well, we'll see that later on. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And when he's going through that Princess Diana one, he's actually smiling. He turns it on for camera, his hands and what have you.
And he's using the actor's pause, and he's really using it.
Right,
and you can see he's using it, can't you? When he says those two boys, it just looks like you don't believe him for a second here. You don't believe he's sad or he feels any empathy at all. It just looks like a big, massive act to me, that, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, in one of the later videos, you'll see that I know you've watched them, but somebody actually asks him, "Are you acting?"
Yes.
The interviewer asked him, didn't they?
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting video.
You know what you see there as well, Dom? You see
daggers,
fury in his eyes. Like,
daggers.
That?
Yeah. How dare you ask me that?
And then that goes back to that other one. Was he told, because he was an actor, that you can do this, blah, 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 I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's been found out for something. And it's only something small and trivial, so it shouldn't bother him that much. But his eyes
and
spin.
It's a controlled environment as well, where it doesn't matter what he answers, because they'll edit it out to mould it into whatever they want.
It's only a micro expression that you see his eyes turn.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It does. It does. Like, how dare you ask me that question?
It's interesting that we both saw that independently.
Yeah, and when he starts the process to kill over 1 million people on all sides for nothing, there's a glint of I'm powerful. I can do this type of thing. Again, it's like a duper's delight, but I mean, I'm not saying he knew the trouble we were going to cause, but it's I don't know. I find it quite.
And when you watch that 9/11 one, you think, did he know or not?
I don't think these people know personally. I think they know that something else has gone on and they're not in control of it, but I don't know whether they know what's gone on.
I don't know.
I don't think I think it's compartmentalised. I don't think they're told.
Fear in his eyes is what I mean when he's saying it.
Oh yeah, you definitely saw that. Yeah. Saw fear. And likewise, when I don't know if I'm watching George Bush, because I watched it a few times with that other video when he's announcing 7/7, and ironically, it's at the G8 meeting that were up at Glen Eagles in Scotland at the time. I don't know why it was G8. I think Russia were there. Right. Putin stood there, wasn't there? So I think they've dropped out, and that's why it's G7. And he were announcing the 7/7 bombings, and he already knew minutes after it happened that it were terrorists, pesky Muslims again. He already knew that, and Bush is nodding his head, and that other guy's nodding his head.
that is when you realise that is the beginning of this 20 years, I suppose. This last
paradigm.
20 years, this paradigm.
Yeah. And one of the worst videos, I think, is that the non-apology, where he doesn't even say he's sorry. He doesn't say sorry once.
He says he has regret. Maybe he could have blah blah blah, but then at the end says, "I did the right thing. Killed
I did the right thing.
1 million people." But...
And anyway, so here's another video of that line toe rag. So, Chris, you watched that Bilderberger video.
Again, you see genuine
fury, fear, and fury. Yeah.
But the Bilderberg things, I mean, I'm sure most people know what it is by now, but how many years ago was it when it was denied? It didn't even exist. It's not that long ago, is it?
No.
I don't have the date for that, but it literally 1 year it didn't exist and it was conspiracy theorist. Then a few years later, they were all getting video jogging around it, and like, what's wrong with Void on this Bilderberg? We're never a secret.
Never a secret.
I mean, that was the old switcheroo right in front of your eyes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I remember watching that documentary I told you about. I've read the book as well, that John Ronson one. I mean, whoever he might be, but where he was following that conspiracy theorist and where he was saying the Bilderberg meeting was going to be, and it was all a bit of a joke. He was following him for a bit of a joke, I think, and then they started turning up in the limos. He was like a proper American conspiracy theorist with a big white hat on, and he was kind of taking a piss out of him. And at the end, they just started rolling in. Security guys wouldn't let him in and all that. I mean, how real that was now thinking about it, who knows?
Yeah, it might just been TV, or it might just been the opening up of this is all we do. We meet up at Trust House 40 and have a bacon sandwich.
Maybe they had to do that because they knew they were getting people starting to notice them. Who knows?
Yeah. So in 1993. Blair was invited to the Bilderberger meeting, conference, whatever it is. In that video, Blair was caught off guard. He couldn't get out of admitting the fact that he did attend, but he wasn't happy about it, as we just said. When asked in Parliament, he flat out denied it, lied to Parliament. But as you saw in that video, when he was asked the question, did you go to the Bilderberger 1993 meeting? He didn't want to answer, but even Wikipedia shows him on the list, as well as Gordon Brown in 1991, and the pedo Ted Heath, Thatcher in 75, 77 and 86, and David Astor Cameron in 2013. Incidentally, as I said, Brown was invited in 1991. They obviously didn't like what they saw and chose Blair. Maybe the Rh negative blood type won through. Who knows? Blair is a pathological liar. These people are never asked what they spoke about at these meetings, nor do they ever disclose what was said. They then go on to take prominent positions in power around the world, in Blair's case, British Prime Minister. In 1994, he took over from then Labour leader, the late John Smith, who died very suddenly. Around the very same time that Blair went to the Bilderberger meeting in 1993, Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez conceived the idea for a horror film. The film entered production in October 1997, just after Princess Diana's sacrificial murder and burial, for the world to see. Diana died on the 31st of the 8th, 1997. She was quickly buried on the 6th of the 9th, 1997. Diana's body was clothed in a long black sleeve dress, which she had chosen some weeks before. A set of rosary beads that had been received from Mother Teresa were placed in her hands. Ironically, Mother Teresa died the same week as Diana. For all you numerologists out there, Diana's grave is on a latitude of 52.283082 north, which equals 28, which equals 10, which goes down to 1 numerology. Also, 1.000278 west, which equals 18, which goes down to 9. You can't make this stuff up, man. If you wanted to make that up, you couldn't make it up. When the horror film premiered at the Sundance Film Festival at midnight on the 23rd of January 1999, its promotional marketing campaign listed the actors as missing or deceased. It was officially released on the 14th of July 1999 before expanding to a wider release date of July 30th. The film I'm talking about was The Blair Witch Project. We're all led to believe that the evil, murderous reign that kick-started the new millennium, that was born from the 1993 Bilderberger meeting at exactly the same time as two unknowns were writing a film script with the very same name of one of the leading actors or frontmen to the upcoming global atrocity, is all a coincidence. It's just another one of those anomalies, isn't it? It just can't be a coincidence. The Blair Witch Project and Tony Blair are both manufactured satanic manifestations of pure evil. The wars that this psycho helped start, although he didn't have a choice, have killed on all sides millions of people and caused distress to millions, if not billions of others. Thoughts, Chris?
Well, it sounds crazy and far fetched, but I don't know any other word where Blair comes into anything, do you? And like you said, those dates, the 1993, 94, it's the same. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? 1999 was literally, 66699, whatever you want to say, is the dawning of where we are now, isn't it? Dawning of 9/11, dawning of 7/7. It's that like, them 2 decades are coming up, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then you've got a film about a witch who's called Blair. I don't know if I mean, it could be absolute coincidence, madness, but
yeah,
I think
it's a very big coincidence, isn't
it's worth pointing out, and it'd be interesting to know more about the guys who made the film. I don't really know anything about them. I mean, they came out, and I saw that film at the cinema. It scared the shit out of me, to be honest. It's a pretty full on. I bet it's probably rubbish now. I haven't seen it since I saw it in the cinema, actually. But yeah, I think there's got to be something there, aren't there? There is no coincidences anymore, is there? I mean, and if there is, there's nothing that would surprise me anymore. I think.
No, it can't, can it?
Yeah,
it can't. It can't be just a coincidence, that, because it could have been any name in front of it. It could have been the Smith Witch Project, it
or
could
even
have been any name.
Something more exciting than Blair.
Yeah.
You wouldn't choose that as a horror film, then, would you?
Well, if it were a place that had really happened and they were based it on a real story, which they didn't, it was called Blair.
It's all made up, yeah.
But it's all made up. It's all made up. Anyway,
interesting.
We'll move on. Yeah, very interesting. So we're going to go into Blair's early years and schools, which sort of forms Beliar's background. So as I said at the start, we're not going to go into 9/11, 7/7, Iraq, Dr. Kelly, etc. Most of that's been done, and we don't think going over old ground would be worthwhile. For 9/11 or 7/7, I'd go to richplanet.net and watch Richard Dior interview Judy Wood and all the other 9/11 stuff he's done. 7/7, Richard Dior, he interviewed Mohammed Diab and Nick Killerstrom. Mohammed Diab wrote the 7/7 Ripple Effect. It's a must-watch, is that really? So we're first going to take a look at Beliar's background. We aren't interested in his politics because they're irrelevant. He is a puppet of the New World Order following the pre-arranged one government world plan. So who is this flocker? Blair was born at 6:10 a.m. on the 6th of May, 1953, which is 9/11 for all you numerologists. Again, you can't make that up. I tried not to make it 9/11, but it was 9/11. His full name is Anthony Charles Linton Blair, and he was born at the Queen Mary Maternity Home for Devils in Edinburgh, Scotland, which has now been bulldozed to the ground. Blair is the second son of Leo Blair and Hazel Blair, whose maiden name is Corskadden, and his very interesting maiden name coming from an ancient Irish-Scottish Corskadden clan. Blair's mother, Hazel Corskadden, was the daughter of George Corskadden, a butcher and orangeman who moved to Glasgow in 1916. In 1923, he returned and later died in Ballyshannon, County Donegal. In Ballyshannon, Corskadden's wife, Sarah Margaret, maiden name Lipsett, which again is an interesting name, we'll come on to that later, gave birth to her over the family's grocery shop, and Hazel was born. The Irish Corskadden family, if you look them up, own the most castles in Ireland. They actually own more castles than the Queen.
Right.
Blair's father, Leo, was the illegitimate son of two travelling entertainers called Celia Ridgway, and the Ridgways were prominent wealthy cotton mill owners, and Charles Linton Parsons. They were not married when Leo was born, and in 1923, social stigma combined with the family's lifestyle prompted his parents to give up baby Leo to the Blairs, who they met while on tour in Glasgow.
What a bizarre
story. Just doing it. Yeah. I know. What a bizarre story. Celia already had two daughters, Jennifer and Pauline, from a previous marriage. I mean, obviously it's not our life, and it was 1923, and maybe.
Well, I mean, even going back when we were kids, a lot of families had,
this type of story type thing. Yeah.
Oh, wedlock and all that lot. But that's bizarro, that one.
Yeah, I suppose our mum had a similar story, really.
Yeah.
father were.
But most families you speak to, in going back to when we were kids, they all have one of these stories, don't they? Something, but not quite as bizarre as that, where it's two travelling
entertainers. yeah.
Well,
when you see the background of Leo's, which is Tony Blair's father's mother, you'll realise there's something funky going on. I couldn't get to the bottom of that side of why they adopted him, but maybe they were trying to keep him out of the way for some reason. I don't know. But anyway, Leo was adopted as a baby by Glasgow shipyard worker James Blair and his wife Mary. Mary had 2 miscarriages and feared she would never have children. She adored Leo, who accompanied her on left-wing rallies. When he left school, he worked as a copy boy on the Communist Party newspaper, The Daily Worker, and was secretary of the Scottish Young Communist League from 1938 to 41. While Leo was away during the war, so he was a communist but then joined up. But anyway, Mary with British Army. Mary Blair burned the contents of a biscuit tin he kept under his bed. These were treasured letters, cards and photographs from his sisters and his real mother, whom he had last seen when he was 13. Celia, his mother, had come to ask if she might have Leo back, but Mary apparently threatened to kill herself. When Leo challenged Mary about the missing tin, she said nothing. He didn't know, though, that she had killed him off, really, his history. He did not question the sudden halt in the once regular flow of letters and correspondence from his blood relatives, believing he had been forgotten by him. Leo had then decided that Ma Blair was his real mother and opted to stay in Glasgow. A year after he returned from the army, Leo changed his name by deed poll from Leo Charles Augusta Parsons to Leo Charles Linton Blair, names inherited by his sons. At 12, Tony Blair stood as Conservative candidate in his school's mock elections. Leo's own political dreams were effectively dashed 2 years earlier when he suffered a stroke at 40. So you've got him changing, right? Leo changed from a staunch communist to a conservative, and he had his son doing some sort of mock school election as a conservative candidate. This is where it starts getting a bit, turning around a little bit, and it starts going a little bit odd, like smoke and mirrors type.
It all sounds like a bit of a romantic story to me, if I'm honest.
It does to me. The publicity about Tony Blair's leadership caught the attention of Leo's half-sister, Pauline Harding, in 1994. By then she was 90, living in Ealing and still in possession of the last battered photograph of her half-brother Leo. She contacted the Blair family, and this led to a reunion which her other sister, Jenna Fee, was too senile to attend. After 50 years apart, the meeting in the Islington home of Leo's eldest son, William, or Bill, was emotional.
Well, do you think that maybe it is true and it's such a weird story and that old day came out and they had no choice but to reveal it?
Probably, yeah. Probably. But it gets a lot stranger, to be fair, in my opinion. In fact, even more so. So, Leo's mum, or Tony Blair's grandma, Celia Ridgway, and his granddad, Charles Linton Parsons, as I said, were actors. And it's through Tony Blair's maternal grandma, the travelling stage performer, who called herself Celia Ridgway, that gives Blair his royal genealogy. You see, Celia was a stage name. Her real name was Mary Augusta Ridgway Parsons. Brideson was her maiden name. So there's a lot of names here, a lot of hidden personalities. It's the Augusta part that carries royal lineage. He's apparently the 12th cousin, once removed, of Prince Charles. Now, although that's interesting, it doesn't stop there. This is where it gets even deeper and ancient too. Through direct lineage from his maternal grandma, Blair is a direct descendant of King James of Scotland, 1513 to 1542, which means he's also probably a descendant of Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, or numbered Charles I, who was king of the Franks from 768, king of the Lombards from 774, and emperor of the Romans from 800. So you've got somebody who's Prime Minister, who's got all this lineage here, who's got royal lineage, you know? And that's what this comes back down to, really, all of it, doesn't it?
So
when we look at all these people.
Just to ask, who owned the castles then?
That was
Just to try and recap.
That was another side. That was his mother's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not this is his grandma.
His real mother's.
His mother's. Yeah. Side. The Corskadens.
Right.
Yeah. They. It's probably a branch of that family own castles.
So in Ireland. Must be royalty then.
I don't know if the royalty. I couldn't find any history on it. It's strange.
It's a lot of bizarre stuff. I mean, you got royalty.
Couldn't find any history.
Castle owners.
Yeah. I mean, I had some help from a couple of guys, as you know, friends, Lorraine and her son Sam, and Sam wrote here. He said the direct line to Charlemagne is important for the Blue Bloods. They like to trace their ancestry through Charlemagne back to the ruling aristocratic dynasty of Rome. Claudia, Julia Claudius Caesar's line. That's where they like to draw the line back.
Yeah.
Rome was founded by Aeneas, a noble who fled the sacking of Troy. He was the great-grandson of the founder of Troy, Ilus, which makes Rome's ruling bloodlines Trojan.
Right.
Troy was founded by the Phoenicians. Ilus descended from Dardanus, a son of Zeus. And that's where history becomes mythology.
Right.
And when you start throwing these into the mix, and you know what this, when you get into the Masons and things like that.
Well, I think someone commented on it. We mentioned bloodlines before. We can't pretend we know tons about it, but it's interesting that somebody came back and said it's a bloodline. You see, that's very interesting. Yeah.
All roads lead to Rome, as they say. On the 22nd of December 2007, it was disclosed that Blair had joined the Roman Catholic Church. The move was described as a private matter. He had informed Pope Benedict on the 23rd of June 2007 that he wanted to become a Catholic. The Pope and his advisors criticised some of Blair's political actions, but followed up with a reportedly unprecedented red carpet welcome, which included the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster, Cormac Murphy O'Connor, I think he was from Ireland, who would be responsible for Blair's Catholic instruction. In 2010, The Tablet, must be a magazine, named him as one of Britain's most influential Roman Catholics.
Just more ritual and what's that all about?
Well, again, he's doing the Irish Peace Treaty as a Protestant, then he turns Catholic.
Right.
You can't get more mixed up than that. If you're religious, that is. I mean, we're not religious, but if you're religious. In 2018, claims were made against Cormac Murphy O'Connor, Archbishop of Westminster. In a newspaper article, it read, a British woman claimed that Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, who died last year aged 85, abused her in the 60s when she was just 13 or 14. Pope Francis quashed the Vatican investigation into claims by a woman that she was abused as a teenager by the former Archbishop of Westminster.
That didn't happen
Blair,
often, is it?
No, not really, no. Blair is also related to the Earls of Strathmore, which is the Queen Mother's family, through his great-grandmother, Mary Emily Montford. One of his descendants, this is a funny link, this, a Captain Flint, was in the service of the East India Company. Probably selling opium to Chinese, which brings you back to today, doesn't it? King James V's ancestry encompasses many other monarchs and prominent individuals, including King Henry VII, Edward IV, or both kings of England, and King Christian I of Denmark. And there's more than that as well. As I say, I'd like to thank my mates Lorraine and Sam for some of the research, and we're going to be carrying on some of that research that they had. They also acted as like a sounding block with extra eyes and ears, ratifying what was found by myself. What I've got here is, Chris, is, to me, the story, the lies are already forming around this. You've got travelling actors. You've got, he travelled around the world acting.
And also, like I said to you, isn't it true that travelling actors were basically early MI6 agents because they used to use them to take messages from place to place? I mean, I know.
Did you say Houdini
was one. Yeah, he was. He worked for the. He worked for the British Scotland Yard.
Right.
Yeah. He was spy for Scotland Yard, monitored Russian activists. And then you've got that film by George Clooney, Dangerous. Was it Dangerous? Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Right.
It was that guy, Chuck Barris, who was presenting the Gong Show. And then they said he was mad, but he later came out and said he was an assassin for the CIA. But whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you do hear that story a lot, that actors were used, because they moved all around the world. They were used to carry a message, because there were no telephones or anything like that to do it.
It was similar to all the lords and the dukes and all that type of thing. They were used as spies, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because they're mixed in high society.
Courier messages around.
Yeah. And also, that obviously, not illegitimate, but, you've got a background. It seems that these people, like Boris, and they've got his dad were adopted. They've got some sort of illegitimacy, haven't they?
Mm. Well, I think
to the bloodline,
I described it to you. Is it? This is just how we were thinking. I think we might mention it when we did the Boris one, but is it like these, these bloodlines? They have illegitimate kids, and they keep an eye on them and look after them, and then bring them into a role later on, and even the kid doesn't know what's going on. Maybe, don't know.
Yeah, a bit like Hitler.
That was the theory behind him, wasn't it?
Yeah. When he's always been rumoured to be a Rothschild love child.
Yeah, from a waitress,
a maid or
something.
Yeah.
So I think I read that I think I was in Fritz Springmeier went over that, didn't I? In one of his books.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Right. Blair also has an older brother, Leo Charles Linton Blair, who is now Sir William James Linton Blair, another peer, another retired High Court judge. Sir William James Linton Blair was born in 1950. He's a retired British judge. He was previously a Queen's Counsel at London Barristers' Chambers 3 Volume buildings, specialising in domestic and international banking and finance law. In 2003, he was admitted as a barrister to the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court in the territory of the Virgin Islands, no doubt watching over the hidden treasures from offshore banking scam and trust funds.
What the hell's he doing there?
Yeah. I thought we'd given all those Caribbean slave islands up. He became a member of the London Financial Markets Law Committee in 2008. In fact, he's worked all over the world, Hong Kong and places like that, all the old British, ex-British colonies in legal finance.
All those colonies that were left but didn't leave, you mean?
Well, yeah, exactly. Just like his younger brother, Sir William was educated at the independent Chorister's School in Durham and Fettes College in Edinburgh before studying jurisprudence law at Balliol College, Oxford. He's a member of the Ethics Committee, I like that, of Digital Catapult's AI machine, Intelligence Garage.
It doesn't sound sinister at all.
No. Well, it's government run. The Digital Catapult is a private company, and the limited number is 0796 4699, and is a British government innovation agency / company for digital and software industry, developed in conjunction with Innovate UK. What's the betting that he's involved in the current nonsense, and that Digital Catapult is helping new surveillance tech using to track and trace us all with? And I did a bit of digging around. I didn't want to go into it because that much information, I could have got lost in this one. But this is what Digital Catapult says. Digital Catapult is the UK's leading advanced digital technology innovation centre, accelerating the adoption of new and emerging technologies that drive regional, national and international growth for the UK businesses across the economy.
It's amazing how they can use so many words and say nothing.
Exactly. Which basically means control.
Yeah.
If you were looking through They Live glasses now, you just see control there.
I know, but why do they have to use such wording to just drown out what they're really doing? I mean, if you were to take that as a business plan to a bank to get a loan, they'd be like, I don't know what you're on about.
No, but they'll put tens of millions of taxpayer money into that like that instantly.
Digital Catapult.
We're going to call it Digital Catapult, and we're basically going to help IT companies control regional and national and international growth. Well, to me, he's another Sir wielding power for the City of London legal and financial institutes, and spreading the word for the government around the world. At the end of 1954, Blair's parents and the two sons moved from Paisley to Adelaide in South Australia. His father lectured law at the University of Adelaide, and it was there that Blair's sister was born, Sarah. The family returned to the UK in the summer of 1958. They lived for a time with Hazel's mother and stepfather, William Maclay, at their home in Steps on the outskirts of northeast Glasgow. Does Blair sound like he's Glaswegian?
There's a bit of
Doesn't sound like
a tint there.
It doesn't sound like Billy Connolly to me. Blair's father accepted a job as a lecturer at Durham University and thus moved the family to Durham, England. Belisle was aged 5 then, and this marked the beginning of a long association Blair was to have with Durham. With his father, the next phase of this is, with his parents' blessing, or basing their family in Durham, Blair attended Chorister School from 1961 to 1966. Got any questions on that? Quite a long section, that. But
No.
So we're going to watch another video just to show Blair in action. And really, he's an actor stroke comedian, and he's trying to crack the funnies here. And he ain't funny, really.
So is my wife at the front as well, turns up right on cue. I was suspect you were going off with a soldier, but anyway. So I shouldn't say that. And indeed, any of the armed forces, to be quite honest about it. But we won't say anything about that. It's probably a very unwise and indiscreet remark for which I will pay a price later.
Blair says that he likes to speak directly to the people and that he's taken more questions from the public on radio phone-ins than any previous Prime Minister. Today, the first call is from a single mother.
That choice to look after my own children.
Tracy, the answer to your question is you are able to look after your children.
I can look after my own children. Yes. I can say that mothering is the reason why I don't want to take up work, and that will be accepted.
You are perfectly entitled to do that, but what I'm saying to you is the purpose of this interview is not to force you into anything, but to open up a choice to you.
So mothering is still a justified profession in your eyes?
Well, no one has ever said anything different. I was never really in politics. I never grew up as a politician. I don't feel myself a politician even now. I don't think of myself as a politician in that sense of being someone who's, whose whole sort of driving force in life is politics.
Because you were an actor at school and at university. How much of an actor do you think you still have to be as Prime Minister?
Look, I mean, politics is a bit like the law in the sense, or the media, in the sense there's a bit of it when you're on show. You're on show, so there's a bit of it that's acting to that extent, but don't confuse it with real life or with real problems and real solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's some people say they're not quite sure which is your real face. And so they think that your acting skills are all part of this. I mean, your old friend Paul Johnson more or less wrote this, didn't he?
Yeah, well, people can think what they like, really, in the end.
That video we've just seen there, Chris, you know that one where he's talking in front of the soldiers with Sherry Blair and he cracks a joke? That reminds me of... remember when V and they were having something and everyone and they had signs up saying clap or laugh, and it reminds me of that where he isn't funny but he thinks he's being funny because everyone's laughing, but they're only laughing because he's Prime Minister.
Yeah, they've got to laugh. Yeah, like a bully making a crap joke in a schoolyard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and don't hit me, so I'll laugh at your jokes, but I'm still going to hit you anyway. So we're going to go on to the his schools, and this makes me cringe a little bit, this, but we've got to go through it. The Chorister School is a co-educational independent school for 3 to 13 age range, and it is a pre-preparatory school and a preparatory school, day and boarding school in Durham, England. It is set in the enviable position of a World Heritage Site in the range of Grade 1 listed buildings adjacent to Durham Cathedral, surrounded by woodlands and riverbanks of the River Wear. Sounds lovely, doesn't it, Chris?
Like holiday destination.
And it is nice up there as well. Its creation dates back to 1416 as a school for the cathedral's choir boys.
That rings a bell, doesn't it? To one of the, I think it was the Johnson ones. School creation 14 somewhat old. That old, I mean.
I mean, I know there's rumours about it being haunted, but that's something else anyway. This school is starting to get and sound a little murky. Headmaster at the time was Canon John M. Grove. 1957 to 1978, he was headmaster. And we're going to go into him a little bit more later. Blair was aged 13, and he was sent to spend his school term at another boarding school. So he'd left that school, and at 13, he'd gone to Fettes College in Edinburgh to board this time, not as a day school, from 1966 to 1971. Fettes College is a private coeducational independent boarding and day school in Edinburgh, Scotland, with over 2/3 of its pupils in residence on campus. The school was founded at the bequest of Sir William Fettes in 1870. Headmasters were from 1958 and 1971, during Blair's time there, Ian McIntosh, and from 1971 to 79, Anthony Chinot Trench. It was here at Fettes College boarding school that Blair met his spiritual mentor or tormentor, Reverend Ronald Selby Wright, at Fettes College boarding school. And we'll be going more on these two later, because you'll see it's just horrendous, man. I almost, as a boy, felt sorry for him.
Well, it was the same with Johnson, wasn't it? These schools just like horror shows, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
horror shows.
You can't get away from that. Is that part of that? That's their system that we don't understand. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it is part of their system because they turn out all sorts of different people, don't they? The school was originally a boarding school for boys only when Blair went there. Blair were reported to have hated his time at Fettes. Does that ring a bell with Johnson?
Yeah, it rings a bell.
Yeah, a big ding dong.
And his sisters, yeah.
I'll bet he did. His teachers were unimpressed with him. His biographer, John Rentoul, so this is an official biographer, reported that all the teachers I spoke to when researching the book said he was a complete pain in the backside. And they were very glad to see the back of him. I'm going to crack one there, but I couldn't.
Comment.
During his time there, he met Charlie Falconer, a pupil at the Edinburgh Academy, so a rival academy, whom he later appointed Lord Chancellor. On the 14th of May, 1997, just after Blair became Prime Minister, Falconer was created as a life peer as Baron Falconer of Thoroton in the county of Nottinghamshire. He was the first peer created on the new Prime Minister Blair's recommendation and immediately joined the government as a Solicitor General. Falconer's granddad was also Sir John Ireland Falconer, a former Lord Provost of Edinburgh. Leaving Fettes College at 18, Blair spent a gap year in London attempting to find fame as a rock promoter. In 1972, at the age of 19, Blair enrolled at St John's College, Oxford, reading, like his brother, jurisprudence for 3 years. As a student, he played guitar and sang in a rock band called Ugly Rumours, which, again, it's an ironic name, that, and performed some stand-up comedy, including parodying James T. Kirk as a character named Captain Kink. He was influenced by a fellow student, an Anglican priest, Peter Thompson, who was an Australian, who awakened his religious faith and his left-wing politics. So, I'm just going to stop there. You're telling me, right, his dad were brought up in a communist household and it's taken Peter Thompson till he was 19 to wake up his left-wing politics?
Have you shown that Peter Thompson video yet, Don?
No, not yet, no. It'll be going on after this, because I found that a bit bit odd as well.
I mean...
we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that when we come to it, Chris.
Okay.
While at Oxford, Blair stated that he was briefly a Trotskyist after reading the first volume of Isaac Detcher's biography on Leon Trotsky, which he said was like a light going on. But he was only briefly a Trotsky, but it was still like a light going on. He graduated from Oxford at the age of 22 in 1975 with a second-class honours BA in jurisprudence. Scholars of jurisprudence seek to explain the nature of law, that's what jurisprudence means, in its most general form and provide a deeper understanding of legal reasoning and analogy, legal systems, legal institutions, and the role of law in society. It all sounds like made-up nonsense to me.
I was just thinking that.
Absolute nonsense. 3 years learning about nonsense. In 1975, his mother Hazel died aged just 52. It was around this time that he met his future wife, Sherry Booth, daughter of actor Tony Booth, who was best known for his role as Mike Rawlins in the BBC series Till Death Do Us Part. So we finished that section there. That was his background there. We're going to come into the characters that were in his background. So I suppose that's the long-winded background of his school times. Have you got all to add before we move on to that, the headmasters and things like that, Chris?
No, I mean, well, I wanted to mention that Peter Thompson. You mentioned that.
We're going to go, we'll do a bit on him further down. So, yeah, we can go into that. It'll make more sense, I think, if you talk about him when we do. Yeah. So we'll go into historic abuse at Chorister School and Fettes College and the characters that were around there at that particular point. Blair went, as I said earlier, Blair went to Chorister School from 61 to 66. Fettes boarding school, he went there as well, and he hated this school. There has been sexual abuse at both schools while Blair was there. Again, same as Johnson. Yeah? Same as Whitty. Same as these people. All through. Stanley Johnson was the same. Everybody we seem to look into.
Well, is it just that the boarding schools are just rife with it, though? You know.
Well, why are they... right. These are the elite families that go to these. Not just... I mean, these are... I would say the Johnsons and Blair were the lower echelons.
But also if someone's gone there themselves and they've witnessed it, then they send the kids there. Yeah. That's a double whammy.
That's
double whammy of it. Yeah, it's totally, it takes it to a different...
Because if you'd experienced something like that, you would not... Anybody who was still switched on would not send their children to that same school.
And then you go back to the fact that they were founded in 1400s. Has that just gone on for every generation?
Well, yeah, it will have done, won't it?
And it's only been exposed in the last, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 70s, I suppose? I mean, that's probably the time anyone started to get prosecuted. So has it literally just... Well,
in fairness, these people aren't getting prosecuted. That's the problem.
Not prosecuted, but exposed. They're getting exposed. Yeah. Excuse the pun.
The poor victims are... right, at Chorister School, the former headmaster, Canon John Grove, was accused of sexual abuse after he had died. I mean, Jimmy Savile's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always seems to be after somebody's died.
Yeah.
You know? Or nobody wants to accept that it's happened like that teacher at that school that you found out about, Stanley Johnson.
Yeah.
That was getting clapped. And there's a bit of that in this, to be fair.
Yeah.
Not clapping,
it's like classic denial, isn't it? Total denial.
Yeah. Blair was actually at Chorister School at the same time as Rowan Atkinson. Yeah. He was a bit younger with Rowan Atkinson. Canon John Grove was quoted as saying the two boys were like chalk and cheese. Rowan was shy and with a slight stutter and a slightly rubbery face, just like the one he has now, says Canon Grove. Of Tony, he says he was outgoing, and if you needed a volunteer, he was the boy who always had his hand up. I bet he did.
I can't slag off Rowan Atkinson.
No, I can't either. But, you know, when you realise that these people have been to the same school, then they're on primetime television, you know, they've been influenced by something, haven't they?
Or put forward.
In all this nonsense, when has Rowan Atkinson come out and said it's nonsense?
Well, to be fair, he never says anything, does he? He never seems to say anything, really.
Well, you know, you look up to these people, but in reality, they don't help you, do they?
No.
And don't expect them to either, but Canon Grove comforted Blair when his father was sick. His father, Leo, had had a stroke. And Blair's mother still sent Blair to school to be comforted by Canon Grove. I almost feel sorry for him. Canon Grove was headmaster from 57 to 78 and died in 2001. He has since been accused by 23 former pupils of sexually abusing them.
Bloody hell.
Durham police found no evidence to suggest any named person still alive, notice they don't name him, had been responsible for any criminal offence, and so the investigation has been closed. So what about them 23 people?
So those 23 people just been ignored then?
You know what I mean? I find it strange.
That's another pattern though, isn't it, Dom?
That is the classic.
Over again.
Let's close it down. 23
people, 25 people, even if it were 3 people, it still deserves a bit more light than that thrown on it, doesn't it?
However, lawyers representing some of the victims say the school insurers have paid out damages reported to run in the tens of thousands of pounds.
All right, so out of court settlements, basically.
Out of court settlements, basically. So it's been closed. Pay them off. Let's get on with life.
Same story as the old.
Forget about it. Yeah, no to see you.
As the old V manufacturers, same story.
Yes. Blair and his older brother also went to Chorister School. There is no suggestion that Tony Blair or his brother was abused here, but there's never been a denial or anything to suggest anything either did or didn't go on. Nothing. And I think in the next part, when we get into some of that stuff, you'll realise that maybe it's part of cover-up. But anyway, Fettes College. This is one that's not right nice. It made me cringe, really. Blair was aged 13 when he was sent to spend his school term at boarding school Fettes College between 66 and 71. Blair is reported to have hated his time at Fettes, as I said earlier. His teachers were unimpressed with him, and his biographer, Jen Rental, reported, as I said, all his teachers I spoke to when researching the book said he was a complete pain in the backside. Blair reportedly modelled himself while he was here on Mick Jagger, lead singer of the Rolling Stones. During his time there, he met Charlie Falconer, as I said, but he wasn't at that school, and he later appointed him Lord Chancellor. However, it was at this school that he met the very Reverend, I don't know where that term comes from, when I was doing some research, there were quite a few, the very Reverend Ronald William Vernon Selby Wright, CVO, TD, JP, FRSE, FSA, Scott. And I'm not going to go through all them, but CVO means the Royal Victorian Order of it's a dynastic order of knighthood established in 1896 by Queen Victoria. The order's motto is Victoria.
It's basically service to the crown, isn't it?
Yeah. And its official day is June 20th, summer solstice. According to the Times, in 2016, Reverend Wright was chaplain at Fettes College in Edinburgh and was once described by the school's historian as the former Prime Minister's spiritual mentor.
We've all got spiritual mentors, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, I had one as well.
I had a couple.
I can't remember who he was.
No.
Can you?
No, it's just spirited away.
Yeah, but what reason I keep mentioning this for is because I want to show how close he was to this guy. Fettes College actually removed a plaque in memory of Ronald Selby Wright and considered removing another one of somebody else we're going to talk to, Anthony Chenot Trench, who was headmaster at Fettes at the same time as Reverend Wright. Chenot Trench was headmaster at Eton, and he had been accused by former pupils of sexually abusing boys under his care. He flogged young boys with their trousers down. Blair, although different in terms of his upbringing to Johnson, went through a similar school system, traumatic, tyrannical and abusive. It's no wonder that these kids grew up to be sadists capable of committing the vilest acts on millions of their fellow humans without even missing a beat. Once again, we have some accused abusers, 3 in fact, well there's actually 4 when we come into something else later, working closely with the future Prime Minister. 1, the Cannon Grove, during the vigil at the Chorister School at Durham Cathedral. The pair offered prayers for Leo, then 40, who was not expected to survive, although he did in fact recover. The revelation in a respected biography shows the key role played by Cannon Grove in Blair's childhood. In fact, Cannon Grove personally counselled Blair on the matter, as I said earlier. The Daily Star also reported that Cannon Grove has since been accused by 23 pupils of sexually abusing them. Can you see now that how close he was? In another story I read, the Reverend Wright is said to have spoke kindly of a promising Fettes lad called Tony Blair. Promising? How come all the teachers said, when they were interviewed by the biographer John Rental, reported that all the teachers said when researching his book, he was a complete pain and they were glad to see the back of him? How can he be promising? It seems to me like the sadists were already marking Blair for his future climb up the ladder to number 10 or some sort of success.
It's funny, Dom, the parallels with Johnson's background. He never directly says that anything happened to them, but they're in the same environment, aren't they?
Yeah, I think this is more obvious, personally.
Excuse me.
On a totally wacky side note, the Reverend Wright was called the Kirk of Canongate, or Canongate Kirk. So the Kirk must be like the priest of that area or whatever, who serves for the parish of Canongate in Edinburgh's Old Town in Scotland. Tony Blair, while at Oxford as a student, he played guitar and sang in a rock band called Ugly Rumours. And he also performed the stand-up comedy parodying James T. Kirk as a character named Captain Kink. Right. So he was Kirk of Canongate and he was Captain Kirk.
Captain Kink.
Captain Kink.
That's odd, isn't it? It's just more oddness.
Odd connections. So he nearly finished his schooling. While at Oxford, Blair was introduced to the ideals of the mass-murdering Marxist communist leader Leon Trotsky. That was Jeff Gallup who introduced him to the Red Terror as well. And he went on a Rhodes Scholarship. And we don't have to get into Cecil Rhodes to know that that's another fabricated event. Gallup is now a professor in Australia. There is no mention of Blair's qualifications when he left FETS at 18, nor could I find any. So how did he get into Oxford? It just says that in 1972, at the age of 19, Blair matriculated at St. John's College, Oxford, reading jurisprudence for 3 years. Now, matriculated, which means that you must fulfill certain academic requirements, such as a matriculation examination. It is a formal process of entering a university. But if he got no qualifications, no A-levels at FETS, how could he get into Oxford? I couldn't. Normally, look, if somebody's got 10 A-levels, it'd say he got 10 A-levels and he's a propeller head, right?
Well, not to say it again, Doug, but the parallels to Johnson, mediocre academic ability, if you like. But for some reason, they just get propelled into these jobs, don't they?
It's yeah, they do. We're going to go into Peter Thompson now. We're going to watch that video first. Then Chris has got some notes on that he wants to have a talk about.
His early life provides clues as to who Blair really is and what motivates him as Prime Minister. He grew up in Durham, the son of a Tory family. He was sent to Fettes, the top Edinburgh public school. There he was something of a rebel, but always had the ability to use his charm to talk his way out of trouble. He wasn't seen as natural prefect material. He went up to Oxford and was lead singer in a pop group called Ugly Rumours, but he took no part in student politics. It was at Oxford that Blair met Peter Thompson, who was to have a profound influence on his thinking. Thompson was an Australian church minister who encouraged students to come and join him for discussions about religion that would go on into the night.
We had a ball. Joie de vivre is the name of the game. And we used to have these marvellous discussions that would go for hours, cigarettes and coffee. And because I was a bit older, I had a bit more money than they did. And so they'd smoke all my cigarettes and drink all my coffee, and we'd get into religion and politics. He didn't have political ambitions at that stage. In fact, all the time we were at Oxford, it didn't... he could have easily gone into the church.
Peter Thompson, when you would have those sessions at Oxford, he said he thought even at that stage possibly you might even think of going into the church.
Well, I don't know about that, but the idea of your beliefs being something that resulted in action was what, in a sense, he brought to the development of my philosophy.
Right, so what did you want to talk about? Peter Thompson, his mate.
I kept bringing it up because I just found that guy super creepy. Well, I know I always say that, but he looked like a groomer. And
yeah, it would. Yeah.
The more what I thought was when he was talking about, and it sounded all romantic that they
drunk me coffee and smoked me fags,
and I had a bit more money. It reminded me of that kid at school who waits outside the school gates, even though he left school 4 years before on his motorbike, and everyone's like, "Oh!" But then you get a bit old, and you think that's a bit weird. Do you know what I mean? Why? I mean, if he's older. Why would he? If you speak to someone who's 18 or 19 about politics, it bores you to death, doesn't it? Because it's stuff you've already talked about, and why would you entertain that in your room, if you like?
Well, he actually said, right, he's obviously religious, Peter Thompson. I think he became some sort of priest or vicar. Yeah, he actually said that Blair was more likely to become a priest or go into a church than he was to be a politician.
Yeah.
Now he's 19, yeah? And I know things change. But when you're at 19, you've been to Oxford and you're at Oxford, you've probably got some fixed ideals of what you want to do, I would have thought. And for him to say that, maybe he's grooming him to go into church. I don't know.
Why did he think he'd make a good priest?
Exactly. Why? Yeah.
Well, just saying it blatantly.
Yeah. But we'll come on. Right. So a brief summary of these characters that were around Blair. These are, to me, what shaped him. The first one was Canon John Grove. 23, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. 23 former pupils at the Chorister School linked to Durham Cathedral told police they had been sexually abused by Canon John Grove, the school's headmaster, between the late 50s and mid-60s. Bang smack in the middle of when Blair were there. However, Grove died in 2001 and police found no evidence, so case closed.
What do they mean? But how are you going to find evidence? What are you going to find?
There is no evidence.
No, but,
you can't find evidence apart from 23 people saying he did it.
It's just disgusting. I mean,
well, the evidence is we interview 23 people.
They all agree.
If they don't know each other and they all say the same story, then
there's no coincidence there. But in 2000, it's the same story, isn't it, over and over again, Dom?
Over and over and over again. And he was close. Bear in mind, this guy comforted Blair when his dad had a stroke.
What does that even mean?
Yeah.
And how do you have that much detail on someone's past? You know, who
and not only did they
him?
comfort him, well, they've got all that detail there. There's evidence of that, but no evidence of 23 people.
Yeah, so they can work out that he comforted him. And
not only comforted him, but had a vigil in the church. So this must have gone on for quite some time, right? The real Reverend or very Reverend Ronald Wright, full name, it is, it took some doing, was actually recruited by the BBC to give it a series of broadcasts. His direct conversational style won him deep appreciation, and he was acquired the nickname the Radio Padre. So he was, he was. This was during the war.
Right. This employing another.
BBC employed another weirdo. Anthony Chevin Trench, appointed headmaster at Eton College in 1963, but was asked to leave in 1969 after disagreements with housemasters and an unpopular attitude to caning, or flogging as they called it, which became the subject of press controversy after his death. Genevieve Trench's health, both physical and mental, also began to suffer with the return of the malaria he caught during the war, because he'd been captured, I think, by the Japanese. He had flashbacks and nightmares. He's just the type of guy you'd have as your headmaster, really. He took tranquilizers to help him with his worsening nerves, and he was employed after he got fired in 1969 at Fettes College to be headmaster there. Yeah, you can't. How can he employ somebody like that?
What did he get fired for?
He got fired for flogging kids.
Oh, for the actual flog, right? He got done for it.
I'll come down to that here. In 1998, Fettes College decided to retain. This is where it comes to that clapping part that we found in Stanley's. A commemorative plaque to Chevenot Trench in its chapel. They didn't want to take it out, and they kept it out of respect for all those pupils at Fettes who like and admired him. Nick Fraser, in his book The Importance of Being Eton Inside the World's Most Powerful School, was much blunter. Reviewing the book, the Sunday Times said that Fraser was subjected to a furtive sexual assault by headmaster Anthony Chevenot Trench. He once flogged the living daylights out of me with a strap on my bare backside. And my brother tells me that the head man, as we called Trench, once beat him and the whole divinity class of more than 20 boys one afternoon.
Good God.
He began at Fettes in 1971, the year Blair left. Blair is reported to have hated his time at Fettes. So I've got some additional research at Fettes College abuse. One of the other interesting people, and I found this totally by accident, Blair had contact as a boy at Fettes with a guy called Sir Knox Cunningham. Sir Samuel Knox Cunningham, 1st Baronet, was a Northern Irish barrister, businessman and politician. As an Ulster Unionist politician, which bear in mind is the Ulster Unionist and his granddad was an Orangeman, which is a Unionist. Yeah, see the links again? At the time when the Unionists were part of the Conservative Party, he was also a significant figure in the United Kingdom politics and parliamentary private secretary to Harold Macmillan. So he was connected, this guy. After the war, Cunningham mainly lived in Orpington, although he retained membership of the Ulster Unionist Council. His religious faith led him to be involved with the World Alliance of YMCAs from 1947, and he was chairman of the National Council of the YMCA in 1949. Cunningham was master of the Drapers Company from 73 to 74. Cunningham was provincial Grand Master of the Masonic Order of Gloucestershire from 70 to 76. Cunningham was a member of the Prentice Boys Club in Derry and attended the 275th anniversary of the shutting of the gates, whatever that means. Throughout his life, he represented the old landed interests of Ulster and remained personally wealthy through family inheritance. Cunningham died suddenly at Derham's house, Minich Hampton, on the 29th of July 1976 at the age of 67. So, I built a picture of who he was. Military intelligence and the IUC and victims named Cunningham as a paedophile and identified his close links to the sex offender ring in the Kincora Boys' Home. But obviously, MI5 denied this. Why would MI5 have to deny it? Why would they have to deny it? According to John Rentoul's biography, Tony Blair, British Prime Minister, said Knox Cunningham would visit the school several times a year and he liked to visit the boys' quarters. Blair loved having discussions with Sir Knox Cunningham. This is all in Rentoul's biography. In another book by Martin Dillon called The Trigger Men, it said Cunningham was homosexual and had links to people involved in child sex ring. According to Dillon's book, there were several boys' homes in Northern Ireland from which boys were picked up and taken to parties in Brighton, in England, obviously. As my source said, top hats and royalty, meaning English upper classes and people connected to the royal family, were part of this homosexual ring. According to John Rentoul's book, and I'm quoting from his book, Tony Blair, Prime Minister, wrote that Tony Blair in his final year at FETS ran a summer camp for Selby Wright's Boys Club. Reportedly, Selby Wright was a persistent paedophile as well, abusing boys at FETS and elsewhere. According to the Sunday Times, 25th of May 1997, Blair's school mentor was a sex abuser. And the Scotland on Sunday reported and also revealed that the man who taught Tony Blair history left FETS following allegations including fondling boys while he caned them, watching children on the toilet and becoming aroused while meting out corporal punishment.
Bloody hell.
Now, Blair went to 2 private schools, both had history of physical and mental and sexual abuse. Are you telling me that 4 people never went near him? He was close to 3 of them, yeah? I don't know about the Chevaux-Tranche one, but he was close to the other 3. Because one was his mentor, one comforted him when his dad passed away, and the other one came and visited him, and he liked talking to him on his own.
Yeah.
I just think all these schools are part of the problem that we're seeing around us now. That these people are, it must open some gates for them to be controlled.
But to them, it's not a problem. It's part of their system.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
their system is that you go through this and you shut up. Hey, you know what? I just thought maybe it's the fact that they can keep their mouth shut, Dom, when they're going through this stuff.
Yeah,
maybe that's why they get.
Maybe that's what they get taught. Yeah,
maybe that's why they get chosen for certain positions.
I mean, this episode's pretty dark, isn't it?
Yeah,
this whole podcast's pretty dark. I don't find myself wanting to joke and laugh about anything in this podcast for obvious reasons. I just find this a bit unnerving that we've got a Prime Minister that went to 2 boarding schools. Well, 1 school, 1 boarding school. All of them have got openly accused people of abusing kids physically and sexually, and he was leading the country. I find that strange. Anyway, here's an edited BBC audio interview with one of the victims, and I've shortened it down, but we didn't want to go through it all. But just to back up what I've been saying, and bear in mind, I think this is about Fettes College, although they're not really clear where it's about because I don't think they can name the person that was being abused, but it's about Fettes College and he was there at a similar time to Blair.
Well, some fairly horrendous things happened to me. I was only at the school for 2 years, with it being a preparatory school, and fairly early on in my first year, I would now call him an abuser, who was a master or a teacher, would call boys out to his desk, under the premise of maybe reviewing homework or giving feedback. And we were all 11, 12 years of age at that time. Sexual abuse wasn't really mentioned or in the public awareness, certainly. And when he called you out to mark your homework or give you this feedback, we were all in shorts, so he would work his hand up the back of your leg into your underwear, and then play with your genitals, touch your genitals, and so on. This was a regular occurrence. I couldn't even tell you how many times it happened, but it happened a lot. And the master concerned was initially a very, very likeable man, but fairly soon we saw that he had a raging temper. He would pick boys up on the slightest of faults, shake them violently by the hair, bang their heads off desks, and so on. And clearly at that age he wanted to avoid that kind of behaviour, so you just kind of looked forward while somebody else was being attacked, and didn't say anything. And I suppose that's how the abuser got away with what he got away with, because you were really too frightened to say anything. And this molestation, this abuse that went on regularly, nobody talked about. And I suspect that we all just saw it as some kind of normal behaviour. At least that's what the master, I think, enforced through his actions and his behaviour. There were 2 or 3 occasions where I was abused on a more, let's put it, a more one-to-one basis, and certainly that was more extreme, yes. But I know that looking back now, having shared this detail in particular with the inquiry, there is that level of utter disbelief that this could happen. But it did happen.
So we're going to get to Oxford now and the bar, because some quite interesting stuff in the Oxford part of this. Apparently, he sat his Oxford exams before his A-levels at Fettes in a report by the Scotsman newspaper I read. But I still couldn't find any qualifications for those A-levels. And I find it really strange that you can just get to Oxford without any sort of qualifications. You just got to sit this exam to get into Oxford, even if you haven't got any qualifications. It just doesn't make sense. You can't get to university. Huddersfield University wouldn't accept you without A-levels, so I don't understand that part.
Yeah, we both tried.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You had to go to school first. After Oxford, Blair then became a member of the Lincoln's Inn and was called to the bar and became a pupil barrister. All these things are just odd names, aren't they? The Lincoln's Inn is an honourable society, of Lincoln's Inn. That's what it's called. The Honourable Society of Lincoln's Inn is one of the 4 inns of court in London to which barristers of England and Wales belong, and where they are called to the bar. The other 3 are the Middle Temple, the Inner Temple, and Gray's Inn. Lincoln's Inn is recognised as being one of the world's most prestigious professional bodies of judges and lawyers. Many prime ministers and world leaders and leaders in every walk of life have been invited here. The Honourable Society of Lincoln's Inn is an unincorporated association of students, barristers and judges, and is one of the 4 Inns of Court. It has been in continuous existence for over 600 years. The Inn is dedicated to the qualification, training and development of our members at all stages, interesting word, of their legal careers in a collegiate and inclusive environment, and with what seems like no A-levels either. It was while at this Honourable Lincoln's Inn that he met his future wife, the delightful Sherry Booth, daughter of the late actor Tony Booth. At the chambers founded by Alexander Andrew Mackay Irving, a.k.a. Baron Irving of Larg, and a.k.a. Derry Irving, who is a Scottish lawyer, judge and political figure who served as Lord Chancellor under his former pupil barrister Tony Blair. He's another mentor to Blair. Like all these characters, Johnson, they seem to have these guardian angels watching over them. Blair has never ever practiced law. Ever. Full stop. Never. In fact, his peers, in an article I read, said he would never pass the bar if he tried. Now, I'm not a lover of politicians, as you know, and I'm sure Chris isn't. They are all actors who crave fame and fortune like the wannabe celebs on X Factor, and Blair is no different. He was a wannabe pop star and an unfunny, untalented comedian, in search and desperate for respect. In the Lying Daily Mail, an article by sellout Peter Hitchens in 2017, he said about Blair, in a BBC interview with Peter Hennessy, who incidentally is a baron and an historian and an academic specialising in the history of government or the rewriting of history, Baron Hennessy said to Blair, Blair said to Hennessy he was only a Marxist for a year or so. But when Hennessy asked Blair what happened next, Blair began to say, when I was and suddenly changed course to in the early 70s. This is plainly not what he had been about to say. Well, what was he in? Why did this previously unpolitical leader of a college rock band go out of his way to join Harold Wilson's stodgy, middle-aged Labour Party as soon as he left Oxford? At the time, revolutionary students utterly despised the Labour Party as a sellout, but some of them swallowed their scorn and joined it with the express purpose of taking them over from within. Peter Hitchens, that was Peter Hitchens who wrote that, who, as I said, has just taken the new medicine on offer, and he's a sellout, total 100%. But what he was trying to say there was that what changed Blair all of a sudden? What changed him from non-political to wanting to join Labour Party? You know? And I think it was this Derry Irving. It's Derry Irving. When you saw that interview, it's a bit creepy, that interview with Derry Irving. There's some side notes here on Blair and Booth. Some things just come up and surprise us doing research, and on the people researching behind the scenes. Blair's maternal grandmother was Sarah Margaret Coscaden Lipset. The Lipset family in Donegal supposedly originated with a German Jewish immigrant to Ireland prior to the 18th century. They are of Jewish Ashkenazi descent. The habitual name from Lieberschutz in Thuringia and Lieberschutz in Upper Silesia, or Lieberschutz in Bohemia. The place names are of Slavic origin, from Lipa, meaning lime tree. So he's actually, or there's a possibility that he's an Ashkenazi, of Jewish descent. Sherry Blair, or Booth, also has an interesting bloodline. Her great-great-great, etc., grandfather was the brother of John Wilkes Booth, the murderer, or apparent murderer, patsy, whatever you want to call it, of President Lincoln. Edwin Booth and Janius Brutus Booth Jr., right name, that innit, were American actors who toured throughout the United States and the major capitals of Europe performing Shakespearean plays, of all things. A family of actors with a patsy in the family.
Also, isn't it weird how both the families come from actors, performers, and John Wilkes Booth. Do you know there's conspiracies around him that he vanished and ran off to Japan, and
right,
yeah, he was just part of the whole
and was never strung
game
up
show.
or anything like
I mean,
that.
how do you go up in a theatre and shoot the president in the back of the head and get away? How do you even escape? He got away, didn't he? And they cornered him in a barn or something. They cornered him somewhere and killed him.
Yeah.
But then the theory is that he actually just ran off.
It's just more nonsense, isn't it? From the story of nonsense, you've got two people all with travelling actors. Again, it's like the Thunberg family, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, the Thunbergs. Also, just to finish off the Booth connection, the founder of the Salvation Army were William and Catherine Booth, who are also thought to be related. The logo for the Sally Army is a red shield, or Rothschild, or Rothschild.
Mm. Ta-da.
Yeah, exactly. Both Blair and Booth are thought to what was termed by Benjamin Disraeli as crypto-Jewish. Ashkenazi in plain sight.
Mm.
What is clear is that Blair and Booth are from backgrounds of actors, as we just said. Sherry's father is reported in The Independent in 1997 as saying, "My great-great-grandfather's brother was the father of actor John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated President Lincoln."
All right, so he just barely came out and said it.
By the sound of it. It wasn't independent. I'm not saying he definitely said it, but that's what he said. I mean, I'm getting I don't know. We normally joke around and laugh, but this is a bit of a dark one, I feel, this Blair first one. It's not what I expected, to be honest with you.
Well, there's always an element of paedophilia through all of them, isn't there? But this one seems a bit heavier on it, doesn't it? Kind of. I don't know.
It's dark. It drained me of energy when I was doing a lot of research on it. Although some of the interesting things, it was all... It didn't seem like he had a happy life, to be honest with you. It sounded like it was forced, under great pressure. I don't feel sorry for him now. I feel sorry for the child as he was, to be quite honest with you. Yeah,
if it's a child, you've got to feel sorry for him. But when you get to an adult, you make your own decisions, don't you?
Yeah, especially in the power he's got. There's a section here I've called Miranda and the Tempest. In an interview in The Spectator in 2007, ironically by none other than Mary Wakefield, wife of Dominic MI6 Cummins and daughter of eugenicist Sir Humphrey Wakefield. We covered these cretins in Boris and Movers and Shakers. Remember that, Sir Humphrey? Well, Wakefield, or should I say Mrs. Cummins, interviewed Clarissa Dixon Wright. Some of you may remember her as the one half of the TV chef's Two Fat Ladies. Well, it so happens that Clarissa, who died in 2014, was also a barrister and went to Oxford. And she also knew Blair at his time at the bar. Their time at the bar overlapped with several new Labourites, including Sherry Booth, who was at the time apparently sleeping with Derry Irvine. Now, Baron Irvine, who we already spoke about, was the Blair's teacher at the bar. This is where he met Sherry. This, according to Dixon Wright, this piece about Blair is said word for word. I'm quoting her. Sherry Blair was clever, but desperately needy and always jumping on Derry Irvine. Actually, Derry Irvine was quite a sexy guy back then, says Clarissa. He radiated intelligence. And then there's Tony Blair. He was a few years younger than me, but I remember him well. He was very glib, a chancer, and he wasn't really respected by anyone of my generation. Everybody used to say, it's just as well he's going into politics because he'll never succeed at the bar. We used to call him Miranda. The interviewer asks, or Cummins' wife asks, why? Because he was wet? No, he wasn't called Miranda because he was wet, ducky. Clarissa guffaws impatiently. Remember the scene in The Tempest when Miranda sees the sailors? Well then, he got on conspicuously well with all the male junior clerks, and everyone knew it. But he's married now, I say, and so are a lot of people.
Oh, God.
What do you make of that?
Well, I don't think you have to spell it out.
But I think this is what the forming of that character that we're talking about, though, where Boris went all manly. He's actually seems to have gone the other way, a slightly effeminate way. And I'm not knocking anybody for any way. There's no way I'd knock anybody for any way. But it's maybe he's a bit undecided. That's what it seems to me. So here's a video of Derry Devine, the guy we've been talking about, who explains the relationship with Blair and Sherry.
Blair came down to London from Oxford with an upper second-class degree in law. He wanted to train as a barrister and applied to join the chambers of a fast-rising QC, Derry Irvine, who's now the Lord Chancellor. Although Lord Irvine was initially inclined to turn him down, Blair managed to talk Irvine into signing him on.
Did you have a sense then as to what he might subsequently become?
No, I couldn't. I certainly thought that on the basis of a half-hour interview that I had here somebody who was very intelligent, very articulate, and clearly very determined. And I probably thought that there was every chance that he would go a long way at the bar. But I will not claim supernatural powers in foreseeing that he would become Prime Minister, certainly not.
He took me on as an apprentice, as a pupil, and then I got taken on Chambers after that.
But so you hadn't gone into the church, but you'd gone into another sort of branch of the sort of established state, if you like, the law. But was that quite specifically because you thought that you wanted to go into politics?
No, it wasn't really. But as it turned out, it was a very good grounding and training for politics. But I didn't go into the law with the specific idea of going into politics.
And it was also, of course, where you met Cherie Booth.
That's right.
How did that happen?
We were going together to try and get some scholarship, I think. And we were both being interviewed at the same time, so that's when we first met. Needless to say, she got the scholarship and I didn't. But then, and then we were both pupils together with Derry Irvine.
And could he see that there was a future between the two of you, do you think?
I don't know. I suppose you better ask him about that, really.
I had no awareness at all during their pupillage that theirs was anything other than a friendly and professional relationship of the kind that young pupils have together when they're doing their apprenticeship in a set of chambers. It was towards the end of the pupillage of them both that I think I had an awareness, not being entirely insensitive, I had an awareness that there might be more to it than that.
This lying back. Whoa.
By the end of the 80s, Blair was seen as a future party leader. He and his wife and their new baby presented an ideal image of a modern young family, which voters could identify with.
The children are in their pyjamas, all ready for bed. But
I'm still young. I've had some good breaks. I've been very lucky, but I'm acutely conscious of the fact that the history of politics is littered with the P45s of those who were supposed to be rising stars and ended up being shooting stars.
Under Neil Kinnock, Blair and his great friend Gordon Brown were like blood brothers. They shared a commons room. They were both modernisers, and everyone agreed that someday one of the two would be the leader. The smart money was all going on the more overtly ambitious Gordon Brown. The moment came sooner than anyone expected, with the sudden death in 1994 of Labour's new leader, John Smith.
Looking at his career, do you see luck?
I think luck comes into everyone. I think luck comes into everyone's career. Tony was the right man in the right place at the right time to succeed John Smith when he tragically and prematurely died.
What did you think of that video with Derry Irvine, not Divine, I keep calling him Divine, Irvine, Baron Irvine?
Well, I almost get tired of saying how creepy they are, but he has a weird smirk when he mentions, when he says, I couldn't see into the future, when he asked him if he could be, saw him being Prime Minister. He also has a weird smirk when he mentions Sherry Blair.
Right.
And then, like you said,
I noticed that as well.
Apparently had a bit of a fling, didn't they?
They did have according to Clarissa Dixon, they had a fling. She's not around now to ask, but she is there on record saying that she basically kept jumping on Derry Irvine.
But they both have a bit of a smirk about that, don't they?
They do have a smirk about it.
Both of them do. When it flips back and forth. Odd, yeah. And he's odd. I don't know. He didn't. Well, I almost get tired of saying how creepy they all are.
He
didn't come across as like
these are creepy. These people are creepy. That Peter Thompson, I'm glad he picked that up. That Australian geezer, and this guy's just as odd. He's an odd-looking. How many people have you met that look like him?
No, not many.
Derry Irvine.
But like you said,
I've not met anybody that looks like him.
As soon as I watched that, Dom, and he's talking about having these young lads around his thing, and they're all drinking my coffee, and I'm spending money on them. You're a groomer. Yeah. You're a groomer. Yeah. That's
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
What interest as a grown man would you have in talking to a load of 19-year-olds, like I said before, about politics?
Yeah.
You're a groomer.
Yeah. He's a mature student.
Got money and fags.
I think the Blairs. I think I got a video. The Blairs actually went to Australia to visit him.
Right.
And it makes you wonder what the links are.
How old was he then? If they were 19, how old was he?
He's dead now. He's dead.
But
now.
I mean, at the time when they were 19.
I don't know. It seemed like he was a number of years older than them. I don't know. I didn't look that far into their ages, to be honest with you. But
I got that. Maybe I just made that up, but I got that.
It doesn't matter really, does it?
No.
If he were 19 and he were 27, it's sort of irrelevant.
Like
really.
I said, like that kid who's 5 years older.
Younger people do look up to older people. It's a fact, isn't it? Until you get to a certain age, and then you realise most of them are idiots. So, who is this Baron Irvine of Lairg? Allegedly, Irvine had been sleeping with his student Sherry before she met Blair. Derry Irvine, now Baron Irvine, is a Scottish lawyer and a political figure who served as Lord Chancellor under his former pupil barrister Tony Blair. So he actually ended up working for Blair. To me, this has got the hallmarks of you're working for me, Blair, and I'm there to watch you.
Yeah, or a controller of some kind.
Yeah, yeah. Among his pupil barristers were Tony Blair and Sherry Booth. At their wedding, he dubbed himself Cupid QC for having introduced them. In the 1980s, he became a recorder with the deputy, then a deputy High Court judge. But that's not the story in the BBC video we just watched.
Yeah, we're going to say that, because he basically said, I didn't realise they got together.
Exactly. Now he's saying he's Cupid QC.
He got them together.
He got them together. He was legal advisor to the Labour Party through the 80s, and he was given a life peerage as Baron Irvine of Lairg in March 1987. He was appointed Lord Chancellor after Blair's election victory in 97. Interestingly, the Lord Chancellor, formerly Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain, is the highest ranking among the great officers of the state in the United Kingdom, normally outranking the Prime Minister.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. The Lord Chancellor is appointed by the Sovereign on advice of the Prime Minister. So just who is this Derry Irvine? There is Clarissa Dixon Wright, or the two fat ladies, saying that actually Derry Irvine was quite a sexy guy back then. He radiated intelligence, and that Sherry Blair was clever but desperately needy and always jumping on Derry Irvine. I get the feeling he was a bit of a ladies' man, to be honest with you. That's what I get the feeling he was a bit of a ladies' man. He used his power.
And his toupee.
While he was married, and his toupee. The Scotsman said of him, he's simply not a nice man. In his time at the bar, his name was a byword for arrogance and pomposity. However, it is this little part that I now realise that Irvine was probably a security asset and put in place to cajole Blair and maybe even place Sherry with him.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Irvine's friend is one Margaret Meta Ramsey. And this information is from a few, but mainly from Powerbase.info and Wikipedia. Margaret Meta Ramsey, the Baroness Ramsey of Cartvale. Once tipped as a future head of MI6, Baroness Ramsey is a former MI6 operative and advisor to the late John Smith, who died suddenly. Funny, after John Smith died, many suspected foul play. And guess who was put in Labour leadership seat straight after he died?
Just quickly on then, was it considered suspicious when he died? Oh,
yeah, there was talk of it being suspicious behind the scenes,
right?
But Steve Durrell's History of the MI6 states that Ramsey was secretary of the International Student Conference, ISC, which allegedly acted as a CIA front. Its offshoot, the Fund for International Student Cooperation, shared an office with the Overseas Student Trust, which also seems to have had intelligence connections and worked within the NUS, which is National Union of Students. Ramsey followed a career of over 20 years with Her Majesty's Diplomatic Service in the MI6, where she was a Scandinavian specialist and was foreign policy advisor for John Smith from 1992 until his death. She was part of the Glasgow University 60s clique, which included John Smith, Derry Irvine, Donald Dewar, Ming Campbell, Sir Angus Grossard, Baron Gordon Strathblane, and G. McFadden, the ex-leader of Glasgow City Council. She was made a life peer as Baron Ramsay Cartville of Langside in the city of Glasgow in 1996. In 2005, she was appointed a member of the Intelligence and Security Committee, which provides parliamentary oversight of the Secret Intelligence Service, or MI6, GCHQ, and the Security Service, MI5. She served on the committee until 2007. She is an advisory council member of the foreign policy think tank, the Foreign Policy Centre. So she's pretty high up there, isn't she? Mm. And she's best mates with Derry Irvine, who's training Blair. And Irvine is then put into a position that's meant to be more powerful than the Prime Minister.
Well, you could see that how he talked about him, couldn't you? And you could see, I don't know, could you see Blair's respect for him?
He talked to him like a little boy.
Yeah. And you could see Blair's respect for, well, respect or whatever, but...
Fear, whatever, yeah. It's a bit like, right, this is your history, Blair, and I know all about it.
Yeah.
And this is what we want you to do.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it, we're going to waste you.
Yeah. And you need to go out with this girl now.
You need to go out with her, or she needs to go out with you, whatever it is. Because we're going to make you into this fantastic... he actually got fired, did that, Derry Irvine, because he spent 650 grand doing his office up. And he was that pompous that somebody found out about it and he actually got binned.
Right.
And they put somebody else in his place. But end of the day, as they say, the damage was done, or the plan was in already got moving, weren't it? So another part of this group of people was Menzies Campbell, or Baron Campbell of Pittenweem, often known as Ming Campbell. I mean, I remember Ming Campbell, I don't know if you will, but Ming Campbell because of his name, Emperor Ming. He was a British Liberal Democrat politician. So you've got Labour and Lib Dem, mates with MI6. He said on the BBC and the Daily Politics show, in reference to the Lib Dem MP Cyril Smith's sex abuse claims when Smith died in 2010, he had no prior knowledge of the allegations and suspicions that have emerged in recent times, and the only rational way to proceed was to allow police to continue with their inquiries. Campbell said they should be fully exposed. I mean, what words to use here? Nothing came of them inquiries.
I'm going to say, I bet that soon fizzled out, didn't it?
You have been in the party a very long time. Were you aware of allegations and suspicions around him?
No, I wasn't.
No.
Not until the allegations and suspicions that have emerged in recent time. But I think what is now clear is that there are a variety of institutions who may or may not, because again these are allegations, have played some part in this. And that's why it seems to me the only rational way to proceed is to allow the police to continue with their inquiries. You'll be aware there's been a press conference taking place, I think, today in Rochdale, in which the police have indicated that their inquiries are now being extended to consider whether or not there was any form of corruption in Rochdale Town Council in relation to the way in which it handled any complaints of this kind. And I think that's the right way to proceed. But before I finish, I'd just like to say that these are serious allegations. They deserve to be seriously investigated. And if young people, any people for that matter, have been the subject of improper behaviour of the kind we're discussing, then that is a matter, for me at least, of very, very considerable regret, and one which has to be fully exposed.
And what about the...
Ramsey's involvement with the Foreign Policy Centre are an indication of an if not outsourced, certainly a close relationship to some of the Foreign Office and MI6 activities overseen by Ramsey. So it is not inconceivable that Irving was an asset, or was part of MI6, of the UK security services, if not the CIA. Mandelson was also a known MI6 asset and was probably also put in place to make sure New Labour was on the right tracks. He's also close to the Rothschilds via Nat Rothschild. He was also in Epstein's book, reportedly, as was Blair and Gates. So we're actually coming to an end of this episode one. It's quite a dark episode for me. I can't say... I sort of enjoyed digging up some of the information, but the whole thing has a dark element to it. And I didn't realise that when I started it out. Did you, Chris?
No. When I reread through it just before we started, I don't know. I didn't find anything funny.
Nice. Yeah. Nothing funny, nothing nice. It's no wonder. I mean, in my opinion, he's been dragged out now for this because Gates has been getting bad press. By the sound of it, he's getting divorced from his wife, the Epstein thing, all the other stuff.
Well, I just
and the front guy
watching that Andrew Marr thing of him being interviewed, it filled me with fury because I remember that guy. You know, I don't know. I suppose I was at an early stage of realizing it was a lot of nonsense, and him saying weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. It filled me with fury at the time, and seeing him being wheeled out now to be the guy saying what liberties we should have if we don't get the medicine, if you like. It just filled me with absolute fury, to be honest with you. What right has that man got to tell me to do anything, or tell anybody to do anything?
He's got no right.
Or advice. They wheel them out as statesmen, don't they? Like they've got some power.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting. Should be in prison. Should be in prison. End of story.
It is a dark one.
It's a hard one.
And I don't know anybody listening to this will find it dark, but you've got to go through these, sadly, to get the full picture.
Yeah.
The full picture is there in front of us. There is links to his history, the story that we haven't been told. We haven't been told that 4 people that he was around when he was a young boy and a teenager before he went to Oxford were abusers.
Yeah, and never got
and never 3 of them.
And again, like always before, they never get into trouble for it. They just get covered up.
Never got into trouble for it. They all passed away and before any trouble came on the doorstep. But let's just say this: if there were 3 of them, are you telling me there was only 3 of them?
Yeah, they're the 3 that got caught.
Or
got mentioned
or caught, whatever. So Blair's father, Leo, just to summarise, was brought up by staunch communists. He was going to meetings, and he was then became a Tory supporter. His father, Leo, was a Tory, and Blair was a Tory. And then, for some reason, he went to Oxford, went to the Lincoln Inn, and all of a sudden became a Labour guy. You know? I mean, Churchill did the same kind of thing, shifting from Liberal to Tory. I know Randolph were in debt, and that's why they bailed him out, promised to bail him out and get Churchill back in the Conservative Party. I think it promised power, going back to what it said. If you want power, Tony, you will have to be leader of the Labour Party, and we'll get you there. We know these universities are breeding grounds for security recruitment. They might not even know they've been recruited. You know, They don't have to come straight up to them and say, we're going to offer you a job, it's X amount a year, but nobody will know about it. You know, that type of thing. They'll just be used. Blair's friends, like this Peter Thompson, may be part of that. He might be part of that. He might be part of that mind control element of it all. Who said he had no intention to go into politics, but all of a sudden had. He was more likely to go into the church, he said. But then he wanted to go into politics. He went down to London and convinced, this is what he said, he convinced, if you look at that full interview, you won't have seen it, he convinced Derry Irving to give him a job, right? Derry Irving was sleeping with Sherry, according to Clarissa Dixon, and Blair convinced him with an upper second-class degree to set him on against Irving's own wishes. Irving, was an high-flying businessman, a lawyer, arrogant, pompous, yeah, couldn't easily be manipulated into setting some dweeb on who just left Oxford with a second-class degree. Why wouldn't he set somebody on with a first-class degree? He was a powerful man in the law in London. And as we know, he had links to security services. Why would he? To me, if you're a second class, you're more likely to be easily manipulated. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's a bit like X Factor, innit? None of them can sing. So we won't pick the ones that can sing. We'll pick the ones that can't sing because we can use them more. Because they're desperate. Just like that Muppet who, what's he called? I've forgotten his name anyway. He annoys me. But I think they can be easily manipulated. Up to this point, he seemed to have no intentions of going into politics until he met Irving. His peers at the bar said he would not make a barrister. The BBC interview said, and that's where you met Sherry Booth. I don't know if you saw that interview there.
Yeah, I did.
How did that happen? Yeah. And Blair said, this is what he said. We were going together, pause, to try and get some scholarship, pause, I think.
Lies.
And we were both being interviewed at the same time. So that's when we first met. Needless to say, she got the scholarship and I didn't.
Bollocks.
And then we were both pupils together with Derry Irvine. Just nonsense. Nonsense. That was just a made-up story.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I don't know about you, Chris, we'll ask you next after I finish this bit. This is my summary of events of the info gathered in this presentation. Blair was chosen pretty early on for the climb up the ladder. That does not mean he was picked out to be Prime Minister, just that he had potential to be used and manipulated by the controllers for high office, given the prominent bloodline and the possibility he is from Jewish Ashkenazi descent, which then brings in the Rh negative blood factor as well. He may have been physically abused by being caned and flogged. He was a trouble causer, so this seems highly likely. He was also close to 4 known sexual abusers, teachers from both choristers and fetes, if not both, and by Sir Knox Cunningham. Some serial abused kids say they seem to have a sign on their heads saying, "Abuse me." This seems, again, highly likely to me. One of the known and accused abusers was Reverend Ronald Selby Wright at Fett College. He was Blair's spiritual mentor. Now, for him to be Blair's mentor, they would have to spend hours together, private teachings, etc., etc. At a time when Blair's father had just had a stroke, he would have counselled Blair as well as the Canon Grove, because his dad wasn't well. And when he was close to at least 2 of them, especially one at the time, you know, how could he escape the clutches of at least 4 sexual abusers? How could he do that? I find that I just find that hard to believe that he's surrounded by these 4 people, yeah, and he got away from them, all 4 of them. I struggle with that one. At a time when, if he had bisexual tendencies in his early teenage years, it must have made him highly vulnerable too.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Especially going back to 80s.
It also brings into... Exactly. Well, this was 70s, 60s, and 70s, so it was even before that.
Yeah.
This also brings into play MI6 via the Knox Cunningham connection. This will obviously have affected him mentally and made him more sadistic, less empathetic. I think he may, and I'm saying this, you said don't mention this, but I'm going to put this in. I think he may have been bisexual. Again, it's my opinion, and I'm not saying he is or he isn't. It's just what seems to be coming out here of the filter. And I don't know if he was, but I'd say if I didn't know him, I'd say his voice sounds camp. Yeah? His voice sounds effeminate. Yeah? And that's not me taking the mickey. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sounding like that. I've got no interest at all. I'm just saying what I'm hearing. Yeah?
I've got a slightly effeminate voice, I think.
Yeah, of course you have. What, that deep bass Barry White voice?
No, I always think, when I hear myself back, I always think I sound a little bit cap.
I'd say, which may explain the rumour about him being caught. I mean, I haven't mentioned that rumour, and I purposely haven't mentioned that rumour up to this point, because there's a rumour that he was caught cottaging at a public toilet and appearing at Bow Street Magistrates Court, calling himself after his travelling actor granddad, Charles Linton.
I've heard that, but I don't know where I heard that. Where did you hear that?
If this happened, there is no evidence of that happening.
Right.
Just rumour. Hence, ugly rumours.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to these weird names in Blair Witch Project and all this
I thought a long time ago I saw some official information.
It was on a string. It's on a string.
Right.
Somebody did a Freedom of Information. There's nothing came back.
Right.
I don't mean to say there isn't anything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying nothing.
Or maybe
came
there was
back.
at some time.
I found but who was the judge then? His brother? The Bow Street Magistrates? I don't know. I found no evidence of this anywhere. I also found I would also account for the two fat ladies statement. After all, Blair is a pathological liar anyway. I think he wants to be something he couldn't be, like a pop star. And Blair is the ultimate worship of mediocrity, in my opinion. All style and no substance. So in that summary there, what would you say? Would you have anything to add into that summary?
Well, like you said, he wanted to be a pop star, then he'd be a pop promoter. And he'd been through acting. And like I said, going right to the beginning, that first video, he looks like someone who's been offered something and he knows what's coming because he looks smarmy and chuffed with himself. And then when
I look at this way, I look at it this way. It took a year out after leaving FET and going to Oxford to become a music promoter.
What does that mean?
Which never happened.
Yeah.
Well, What did he really do?
Yeah. Where was that missing year?
What really happened?
Yeah.
Is that his programming year?
Yeah.
Is that the year he gets programmed or promised? And yeah.
Or given a load of goodies just to continue a year later. I also noticed, the Johnson one was all that old footage of him, like you say, 23 people in the crowd, and then you flash forward and he's with his family looking all cosy. But before he's become anybody, why all of a sudden was that footage made leading up to him being Prime Minister?
Yeah, there's no reason for it.
So you've got another little fake documentary and some fake old footage of him, before he was anybody. It didn't make any sense to video him, did it?
No. Why would it be? Again, I think he were in a church, that first one where there were 26 people.
Stacking his own chairs, etc.
Yeah. It's strange because these people all seem to go through some kind of breeding mincer that makes them into monsters coming out the other side, doesn't it? Illegitimate royal bloodlines, abusive boarding schools, eugenics, sadism,
same story,
pathological liars, just same story, innit? All the way
over
through.
And over again. And it's almost like the ones are going to use the most, i.e. him with Iraq and i.e. Johnson with now, they're the ones that go through the rafters the most. Or have got more bloodlines, more abusive schools, if you like,
Well, the one thing I expected Johnson to have bloodlines because he comes from that type of background. I didn't really expect Blair to have it. When I first glanced, I didn't look at it and I thought it'd be hard work finding.
I thought maybe it was his missus more than him.
Yeah. But he's actually got more than I thought, and they're really intriguing ones. They're the ones where if you were into the Masonic, sadistic worship type stuff,
well,
being a king of Rome is something these people
if you think
hold up in high esteem, don't they?
Blair was used for the ultimate biggest act, wasn't it? That was the biggest act in our lifetime. Probably didn't seem like it at the time, but that invasion of Iraq kicks off the whole Middle East terrorism. Next 20 years of terrorism threat thing, right up until 2020.
Right up to the
2019,
nonsense. The only good thing about this is we haven't spoke about the nonsense, which is good. I don't want to. But I found this episode was very dark. I'm sure we'll get some comments about that, but it was quite dark with it. But we're witnessing this all around us. All these people come from these type of schools. When you look into the backgrounds, they're all at these boarding schools. They're all boarded off. They're all at Oxford. They're all recruited by probably security service, which is another front for the elites controlling mechanisms. They all become doctors, MPs, business leaders, plastic celebs, religious leaders. I could go on and on. Lawyers. They're all... one of the comments on one of the films I put on about Dr. Hilary Jones, one of the comments said, I was down in Westminster today and I saw people like him slithering in and out of Westminster. And I thought, You know what? That does sum it all up, because when you look at Blair, that's what he looks like. He looks like he slithers around.
Yeah. Just put him in a suit and it'll be all right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all we've got time for in this episode. Remember, we're all sheep, but some of us are trying really hard to escape. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye.
Will grow old, then I will die. I'll be a part of the oceans and sky. When I was young, before my life, I was a part of the oceans and sky.